A lot of guys in sport, they just practice and they practice and practice. But like a guy like Tiger, every single time he practiced, every single shot he hit had some purpose to it. By continually putting yourself under pressure during practice, it just became second nature.
That's the key. For the audience listening, whatever you're doing in your life, right? You have to do it with intention and purpose. You can go to work and you can just be there. You can go to practice and just be there. But are you really doing everything with a purpose?
Sharp French, what up? This one luck, I let the pain inspire me. I put my all in everything I'm doing. Up until it's done, I'm me for the entirety. I put in overtime, I be working. Just know I'ma go for mine, cause I earned it. They watching, I know it's time. I confirmed it. A whole society determined success.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Determined Society. I am here with an amazing guest. He's an author of a brand new book called Together We Roared. You may have seen him on TV, PGA tours, winning major championships with none other than Tiger Woods. I have Steve Williams here with me. His book chronicles, and actually memoirs, a history from 1999 to the year 2011 as Tiger Woods caddy, but winning 13 majors in that time frame, which is the most dominant time in the history of golf. So I have with me today none other Steve Williams. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, good, Sean. How you doing today?
Hey, man, I'm great. You say today it's Friday for you and it's Thursday for me. You're on the other side of the world, living in the future. I'm envious. How does it look?
Yeah, a bit of a time difference zone between Florida and New Zealand, and also a long way to travel as well if you're traveling from Florida to New Zealand. So yeah, other side of the world for us.
Yeah, man, I do. I've never been to New Zealand, but I've always have been intrigued. It's a beautiful country, and hopefully one day I'll know it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've had numerous people come here from the United States that have never been here before, and, they fall in love with the place. It's a small country, but it's got so much beauty to it. And yeah, people just love it here. It's a great place. So you'll have to get here one day.
Hey, man, don't tell you with a good time. It sounds like a blast. And like I said, I had known many people that have been from there, and like, hey, my country is just so beautiful. It's just, there's so much beauty in that area. So maybe one day, maybe when the kids will, or maybe my wife will come out there, be able to enjoy herself.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, so very happy to have you on the show. Very decorated career, obviously, in the mix during, in many people's opinion, the most dominant time in golf. Like that 13 major championship run in 12 years with Tiger Woods was epic, right? But your relationship was much more than just professional relationship. And we'll get into all the things with your book. But for the audience that isn't familiar with you, can you give them a brief, just quick, overview of who you are, what you've done, and where you're at now?
Yeah, well, Sean, I've been a caddy my whole life. So unlike a lot of people that have only maybe had several jobs, several positions, whatever, I've actually been a caddy my whole life. The day I left school, I started caddying and caddied right till I retired. I'm 62 years old now. I retired about 4 years ago from caddying. So I spent 42 years caddying, nothing else. And in that time, pretty much had 4 full-time gigs along with, when you caddy for other people occasionally and that, but pretty much my full-time gigs were Greg Norman, and then American Ray Floyd, then Tiger Woods, then Australian Adam Scott. So I've just caddied my whole life. Big Speedway fan. Do Speedway. I've competed in Speedway for a lot of years. Run my own foundation here in New Zealand, and I'm a big fan of rugby, our national sport in New Zealand, and golf, of course. So just been a caddy my whole entire life.
That's awesome. As you said, you mentioned there's people that have worked about 5 to 10 jobs throughout their whole life. You were blessed enough to find what you loved from the beginning and stick with it and have an illustrious career. Now, I don't want to overlook the Speedway. I know you're a big racer. Talk to me about that, because to me, I don't know if I want to get in a car going over 80. That's just me. But you love the speed, you love all that stuff. And if I'm not mistaken, you did have a crash that hospitalized you too, didn't you?
Yeah, I compete. We call them saloons, super saloons here in New Zealand. In America, they call them late models. It's a dirt track, oval dirt track racing, very high horsepower cars that race on dirt tracks. And it's a sport that I ideally love. I follow it today probably closer than I follow any sport. I just love the racing, and I still race a little bit myself, not as often as I used to. Getting a little bit long in the tooth sometimes with racing, but still, this past season I've done about half a dozen meetings. Yeah, it's just a sport that I really love, and I'm very fortunate to have won 2 national championships, and only one of a handful of drivers who've won national championships in 2 separate divisions. So quite proud of that achievement. But yeah, and when you race, it's not when you're going to wreck. It's not if you're going to wreck. It's when you're going to wreck. So yeah, I've only ever had one real major crash, and it was quite funny because it happened on a Saturday night. And I was due to be going to Hawaii on the Monday to caddy for Tiger at the season opening. Back then, I think it was called the Tournament of Champions. It was the seasoning opening tournament at Kapalua for all the winners from the previous year. I broke a few ribs, and what they call degloved my hand. I pretty much sliced my hand in half, lost a finger in that, and the surgeon said, well, there's 2 things you can't do. 1 is swim and 2 is fly. And that was on Saturday night, early Sunday morning in the hospital. And the first thing I did on Monday was fly to Honolulu and then on to Kapalua. Then the first thing I did when I get there, I had a swim. So, and went on to have a good week. So, when you race speedway at high speed and that, and there's always going to be accidents and that. But yeah, no, it's a sport that I dearly love. And like I said, I follow it, to this day. I follow it a lot.
So 2 national championships in 2 different divisions. You said the only one to ever do that. Like, dude, you win wherever you go, man.
What's that?
You win at everything you do.
Yeah, well, you put a lot of effort, a lot of determination, a lot of desire. Every time when you set out to do something, you got to have a goal in mind. And when I set out to do speedway, I actually had a goal in mind. I wanted to win 3 separate championships in 3 separate divisions, but I actually never got out of racing the 2 divisions that I raced because I loved them so much. I had a third one in mind, but I never actually made the transition to that class.
That's fair. But I said that jokingly, but a lot of times when we look at people that not only just chase greatness, but achieve it, there's some certain characteristics and traits, right, that go along with those individuals that transcend different verticals, right? Sports, you have golf, and then you also have racing. Like, they're 2 completely different things, but the mindset has to be one of the same. Can you walk the audience through what you feel those traits are for you and how you apply them in everything you do?
Yeah, look, I mean, whenever you do something, you just got to start out and you've got to have goals. And that would start out with being a weekly goal, monthly goal, a yearly goal, and a career goal. And that's what you do. You've got to make those clear to yourself what you want to do and how you're going to go about and achieve them. And it gives you something to focus towards every day, to work hard towards. And then when every time you have a little mini goal and you get some kind of a successful achievement, you got to celebrate that and then go on to the next one. And that it just gives you something to look forward to work to. Tiger was absolutely no different to that. When I first went to talk with Tiger about taking the jobs, and we talked about his goals and what he was wanting to succeed with. And his goal was to break Jack's record of Jack had 18 major championships, and he wanted to break that record, and that's what drove him every day to greatness. Obviously a fantastic player, hugely talented, got everything going, but he had a goal, and nothing was going to get in his way of trying to succeed and break that goal. So nothing's impossible without getting. If you get the right people around you, in my case, it would be the crew of a race car, and in Tiger's case, it would be his manager, his caddy, his trainer, and the personnel in his office. Get the right people around you that believe in you and support you. You can do anything. I believe it's very important to have goals, not just sort of to amble along and hope to do something. If you write something down and see it in front of you every single day, it makes you want to work hard and strive towards it. And whether you achieve your goals or you don't achieve your goals, if you can honestly say to yourself, I worked as hard as I could, I believed in myself, I did everything I could to achieve those goals, well, you've achieved something anyway. And as long as you have fun along the way, that's the key. Whatever you do, you've got to have fun. And if you've got, sometimes you might have too lofty, the goals you set might be too lofty, and it's going on dragging you down because you might not get there, or then you can readjust. But as long as you enjoy the journey, that's what counts.
I love that, Steve. There's so many amazing things you said there, right? One of the big things that I want to lash onto for the audience listening and watching right now, really, really pay attention to this one. You said, have goals, work towards them every day. And when you hit that goal, you go and chase another goal. A lot of people think once they hit that goal, that's the finish line. And what we have to understand in life and in sports and whatever profession or career or thing that we're chasing, those are benchmarks, right? And as long as you're still active, there's other goals to achieve, right? As somebody, and you mentioned Tiger, obviously, that was driven to beat Jack's record, right? Was there ever any moment, I'll probably already know the answer, but for the audience, was there ever any moment that you saw him get comfortable, you had to redirect him back to his original?
No, 100% not. Look, he was just, when you set you like I said, you have a, weekly goal, monthly goal, yearly goal, and your ultimate goal, that ultimate goal is going to be something that, for a professional golfer, it's probably, getting to number one player in the world or something like that. And only a very certain handful of guys can do that. But, so ultimately the very final goal is probably something that you may never ever actually reach. It's something that's just going to keep you going all the time. And in Tiger's case, that was Jack's major championship record. And he never took his foot off his gas. He never looked sideways. He just kept his, when he would play, I give you an example of the sort of intensity around that. When Tiger won the US Open at Pebble Beach in 2000 by 15 shots, arguably one of the greatest performances we'd ever seen in the modern game. To win a major championship. He was 3 under par and the next guy was 12 over. Sorry, wrong way around. He was 12 under and the next guy was 3 over. The first thing that Tiger said to me after he signed the scorecard before he went to the trophy presentation, he said, "Steve, I want you to get your ass over to St Andrews, Scotland." That was the next major championship, the Open Championship. And he said, "I'm going to play better." That's the intensity that was around that. There was no sort of big celebration of winning the US Open with this record margin. His focus, at the moment he'd signed a scorecard and signed off, his focus went to the next major championship. It's at St Andrews, a course that he loved, and he wanted to win that championship. And of course, that when he did win that championship, that was the grand. That was winning all 4 of the major championships. The Grand Slam. So that was the kind of focus that he had, and it was just, the drive to beat Jack's record took precedent to everything he did. And of course, for him and anybody else later in life, when children come along, you get a bit older and there's more responsibilities, and you've got more things to do because of who you've become and so forth. But he was always able to separate that and never took his foot off the gas as far as the practice, the preparation, everything that went into winning major championships, getting himself, ready for those tournaments. For the major championships, to win those, you've got to peak for that week. That's the key. And he was able to do that better than anybody. That when he played in a major championship, he was always fresh. He was always ready. And he was, he hadn't come in off playing too many weeks, or he wasn't tired or whatever it might be. He was ready to go. And even for myself, watching a guy like that, even though I was working alongside somebody, to actually work alongside and watch and follow a guy with that much determination and drive to succeed was very, very impressive to watch.
It's one of those things, Steve, where you had mentioned he won that tournament by 15 strokes, right? It said, "Steve, get your ass to Scotland. I'm gonna play better." A lot of people would say, right? Because when on a level of what I do, right? I hit a benchmark. I say, okay, what's next right away? And people will tell me, we enjoy this for a little bit and then move on. For high performers like Tiger, like you, like me in this space, right? We enjoy it in our own way, right? That chase and that pursuit for the next one that's the celebration and the work that goes into it, right? Have you guys ever sat there identified that, or is it just second nature to you guys? Because for me, it's just I move on. I'm like, okay, this is cool. We did this. Well, let's do this next month. And that's the celebration for me, man.
Yeah, look, I mean, everybody, Sean, everyone has a different way they go about things. And I would have to say that Tiger Woods would be very unique in the way that he went about things. Some guys win a golf tournament, particularly a major championship, that, they might go on a 2 or 3 day bender after the thing. Tiger will maybe have one drink, a quiet cigar, and then his focus would be to the next major championship. I mean, so when every time towards the later part of the years when I was caddying from, and each time it was another step up the ladder, the ultimate goal became clearer. And when that ultimate goal becomes clearer and it doesn't seem too far away, then the actual work ethic and the desire gets further and further ahead. You work even harder because now this thing, it starts off as a goal. And is it a realistic goal? Well, who knows? But then when it actually becomes a reality that you can get there, then the focus becomes even more intense and the chase becomes greater. And like you mentioned, that's your kind of satisfaction. Is okay, I'm one step closer now. If I can get the next one or one of the next two or whatever it might be, so there's but like then there's the opposite side of that. Some people, they celebrate in other ways. I know some of the golfers and that, they finish on Sunday, win a major championship, and they're still hung over on Thursday before they tee it up in the next tournament. So everyone goes about things different ways. But when you're chasing a goal that's at the level that Tiger was trying to chase, I mean, there was just no time for anything else but chasing that goal and putting every single effort you could into it.
Yeah, I love that, right? I agree with that. And you look from what you're telling me that I remember Kobe Bryant, right? He's one of the greats, right? It's like he was a world championship. He's in the gym at 4 a.m. the next day practicing because now, right, that's over. He did that, but then the next year's still going to come. He has to stay sharp. That's the difference between being a really good golfer or a really good basketball player and being one of the greatest ever. There's a difference.
Yeah, look, there's a mindset. If you take all the great athletes, one thing that makes an athlete so good. If you look at Michael Jordan, a Wayne Gretzky, a Tiger Woods, ultimately, what makes those guys so good is that yes, they're incredible athletes. Yes, they work hard, but so do they all. But what makes them so special is they have the ability to perform their best when it means the most. And that's where it comes into the mental side of things, and that you can perform your best under the utmost pressure. Look at Michael Jordan and all those extraordinary playoff games and that. Look at the guy like Roger Federer under the most intense pressure in tennis major championships, Tiger in the golf things. So those guys that have that, have reached the absolute pinnacle of their sport, they're fantastic players. They have, they work incredibly hard and that, but they just have that little bit of extra mental edge. And that's something you can't teach. That's something you've got. You've got that mental capacity to be able to thrive under pressure, that you play. You can't teach someone that, but how do you do that? Like, a lot of guys in sport, they just practice and they practice and practice. But like a guy like Tiger, every single time he practiced, every single shot he hit had some purpose to it. He'd go to the range, and I don't want to delve too much here because the book is like a backstage pass to how it all goes about. How did Tiger become so good? What made him so good? What were these major championships like? And, that Evan, who I co-wrote the book with, we've tried to give the reader a backstage pass. But, these, when Tiger would go to practice, he'd hit the first few shots just to get loose, get a feel in that. And then every single shot had a purpose, and he'd visualize what that shot was going to be, and often put himself in a position. Okay, here I am, Tiger Woods, Sunday, the 12th hole at Augusta with 9-9 in my hand. Here's the flag and that, and excuse me, and hit the shots and that. So by continually putting yourself under pressure during practice, when you're playing and you're under pressure, it just became second nature.
See, that's the key. For the audience listening, whatever you're doing in your life, right? You have to do it with intention and purpose. You can go to work and you can just be there. You can go to practice and just be there, but are you really doing everything with a purpose? And see, so greats like Tiger Woods, they go through those moments and visualize where they're at. They put themselves in that pressure-filled situation to where this just isn't practice. This is the real deal. And they follow a process every single day without fail, no matter how they feel. They have discipline, they go through it, and they run their play every day. So that way, when it does get time, they've already done it 1,000 times.
100%. I would frequently in my time caddying for Tiger get to a shot and, it's a high pressure shot, a lot at stake. It's end of the tournament. And I just say, Tiger, it's just another 7-iron like you've hit on the range 10,000 times. It's just another 7-iron, so you just make the picture as clear as you can and you just go ahead and do it. It's like you said, or like a lot of people just go through the motions and they think that because I've done this, done that, and do that, well, I've ticked that off. Maybe that, might lead to some, greatness on that. But, there's more to, you just can't go through the motions to get greatness.
No, absolutely. And that's a gift, right? That's something that's developed. Some people have it naturally. I think, for me growing up and playing baseball, every time I picked up a bat or every time I did something on a baseball field, it was with a purpose. I was always putting more pressure on myself when no one was watching. So that way, when someone was actually watching, I was ready. And it's a very undervalued skill or a process, right? To put yourself in those positions, to visualize, like I said earlier, you visualizing something in a major, and the final hole, the final shot to win it. Anybody that is in sports or actors or anything like that, visualizing it is one thing, but feeling the attainment, I feel, is so important. When you visualize it, feeling the feelings of what it would feel like when you do it, I think is just as important as visualizing.
Yeah, 100%. So we all that stuff is possible, and you can do it when you practice. So, like you said, you just can't go through the motions. You've got to put yourself mentally into that position that you might ultimately be in, whether that's shooting a 3-pointer to end the game, being the last man on deck to hit a home run to win the game, in golf, hitting the ultimate shot or holding the putt. I mean, you hear professional golfers talk about all the time when they're practicing on the putting green and they visualize themselves having this putt to win this tournament, that. You've got to do that frequently, and you've got to build that up to a very climatic situation in your own mind, and then apply the focus in practice and keep continually making you do it and make it happen under the pressure that you put yourself under. There's a lot to be said for all that kind of thing, and everything you do. You just continually build that pressure up inside you, and to the point where you can handle that pressure. And even when you're doing it, just on your own or with a small amount of people around you, however it might be, ultimately, if you can continue to succeed in that, and then you put yourself in that position in the golf tournament, it'll become more natural to you to be able to do it under the situation. But then, look, golf is such a different sport to so many other sports because most sports are a reactive sport. You play baseball, the pitcher throws the ball, you hit it. It's a reaction from a delivery of a pitch. The basketball, you receive that from somebody else. But golf, you're hitting a stationary object. It's a mind game, probably more than any other sport. So, a lot of sports, there isn't time for pressure because everything's a reactive thing, whereas golf is not a reactive sport. It's a stationary object. You're on your own. So, there's probably, as far as pressure goes in golf, there might be more mental pressure in golf than most sports.
I never thought of it that way, man. That's impactful, right? Because I always think sports, pressure is pressure, right? But when you break it down like that, in baseball, yeah, you might get anxious on the on deck circle or in the dugout. But once you're up in the box, like you're just reacting. Hopefully you're not thinking too much. The great ones don't, right? Anybody productive is just going to see ball, hit ball, have a plan and approach. You go with it. But golf, you're right, a stationary object, man. There's nothing to go off of, right? There's nothing to play off of other than when you say it's time, right? And
yeah, well, I mean, you think about a quarterback. The receiver, he takes the catch off a fantastic throw from the quarterback. It's a reactive thing in that, like golf's just so different because the object is stationary, and so there's so much pressure in yourself because you're standing over there over a stationary object. Well, every other sport, most other sports, you receive the ball or you give the ball. It's a reaction from somebody else. So, you've heard over and over, Sean, there's a saying in golf, it's a game of 6 inches, and that 6 inches is between the two ears. And that, there's, I think golf has, an extraordinary amount of pressure compared to a lot of other sports. Like it's just, okay, if you look at tennis now, okay, there's some pressure when you're serving because, you're serving, but when every other shot outside of a serve, you're hitting off a return from somebody else, so a lot of times, in a lot of other sports that are reactive sports, there isn't time to think about the pressure because everything happens instantly. And sometimes it happens when you don't expect it to happen and you receive the ball when you weren't expecting to receive the ball. But in golf, everything, you tee it up, you hit it there, so completely different sport. But yeah, in the book, look, we take a good look at, how Tiger was able to compartmentalize everything and spend so much time focusing on these major championships. And so like it was for me as a caddy to walk alongside a guy that's played arguably who's the greatest golfer that ever played. Well, we're never going to win that debate. Is it Jack? Is it Tiger? Well, we all know Tiger played golf at a level like nobody else has played. And of course, even Jack would agree to that. But Jack has 18 majors and Tiger has 15 majors. So, but to walk alongside a guy that's played golf, unlike anybody else for a sustained period of time, was pretty special.
No, absolutely. But look, man, like that's part of it, right? But you guys also had a personal relationship. What was it like watching Tiger from the point where you met him as an amateur and watching him grow and watching your actual friendship grow? What was that like?
Yeah, like when you caddy for a professional golfer, it's something I learned way back in my early time caddying for Greg Norman, is that, to work for somebody, you have to become, or you not have to, you become friends, because when you caddy for somebody, you spend more time with that person than anybody in their lives. I mean, it's an intense relationship. And, if a guy plays 30 tournaments a year, that's, and every tournament is a 6-day, you're together for 6 days, Tuesday, Wednesday practice, the tournament's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then outside of that, there's a lot of the weeks you spend with the player where they're practicing just, at their local golf course or their home or whatever. So you become friends, but you've got to be able to separate that when you go to the golf course, and that you're the caddy and you're working for this guy and he's the boss, and you got to separate that. So it's a very fickle kind of thing to break down how that works. But you ultimately you can't get too close to the player, because you've got to make some very big decisions, and you've got to make some big calls and say some things at times that, if you become too friendly, perhaps you won't say that sort of thing. So yeah, it's the caddy relationship is a very unique one in sport. You're part of the game. You're in the game. You're on the field of play. You're up close, and you provide a lot of information, give a lot of advice, and ultimately provide some advice that can be very beneficial to the player.
Can you give an example of sometimes a time maybe that you had to say something that you wouldn't have if you got too friendly?
It's funny. I caddied for Tiger for 13 years in that, and we only ever had one dust up in that 13 years, and only one, which is probably pretty unique. Yeah, and the reason for being is because you've got two guys here that are ultimately chasing one ultimate goal, and two people that have the utmost respect for each other. And I got to the point where, I could read Tiger like a book, as they say, and he was the same with me. He would know what's coming next and sort of thing. But anyway, one particular golf tournament that was at the Masters, and Tiger was in contention for the tournament, and in the morning prior to every round, you go out and have a look at. There's a few holes at Augusta. You need to know where the tee is located, where the hole's located, and I would relay that information on the practice tee. Just say, hey, Tiger, the par 3 tee on the 4th hole, you need to know. He likes to know where that is, and the 3rd hole. Anyway, the par 4, the short 3rd hole, on this particular year, they put the tee down close to the front of the tee, which made it very possible to drive the green. And when we got to the hole, Tiger parred the first hole, birdied the second hole, was right in contention. And the third hole, you just got to hit a driver. There's a chance you could possibly, it's difficult to actually put it on the green, but you can get it very, very close around the green. And there is a chance you could hit it on the green, make 2, maybe a 3, and he didn't want to hit driver. I just couldn't understand that. And I kept, saying you've got to hit driver here. He had a terrible shot, absolute shit shot, made bogey, and it cost him the tournament. And he was absolutely livid. And, a saying that we say down under here is he carried on like a pork chop, for the next 5 or 6 holes, just, uncharacteristic behaviour, childish behaviour, this, that, the other. And then going up the 9th hole, I actually let it rip, just gave him an absolute, drilled him a complete mouthful. And I didn't realise the 9th hole at Augusta, there's no spectators, can hear you, because the first hole was over to your left-hand side there, so there's no one in between. But somehow some reporter must have heard what was going on, or I don't know how, but it got into the media, and it was a bit of a circus when we finished. But ultimately, Tiger absolutely respected that, and that was the only sort of dressing I ever gave Tiger. So that I've talked a little bit of that in the book as well.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin it for people that are going to pick up. But that's funny. Those are the things that are interesting to me, right? Because here you have 2 big competitors, right? When you're in something together and you're chasing that common goal, people don't realize, they don't understand athletes, coaches. I don't say everybody doesn't understand, but a lot of people don't understand that aggression part of it, right? Like, we can be on the same side, we can be on the same team, we can be going for the same goal, have the same thoughts in mind, but there could be massive, as you would call it, dust-ups from time to time because of the competitive nature. And there's passion there, right? There's a lot of passion.
Yeah, Sean, you can't achieve greatness without passion. I mean, they go hand in hand, and when there's passion, there's adrenaline, and when there's adrenaline going, the things sometimes can get a little sideways in that. But ultimately, the guys that have the most care, that care about what they're doing, they have the passion. And I've caddied for 40 something years, and I've never seen a player take so much pride in what they do as Tiger did. Every day he walked off the golf course, he shot the best score that he could possibly shot, never ever threw a shot away, or never ever gave up. There's so much money in professional sport, all sports, and golf's no different to that. And some players get going along and just things aren't going good. No, that's all right. I go home for the weekend, come back next week, sort of thing. There's just, that never would ever enter Tiger's head. That no matter how good or how bad he was playing, but if he was playing poorly, he would somehow make a way to survive the cut. I mean, he just took so much pride in what he does. And, that was something that it was, I took immense value out of watching just how much pride he took. And, players often get paid an appearance fee to go and play golf overseas off their, if they play on the PGA Tour, and they can go and play in the European Tour, the Japanese Tour, the Australasian Tour, Asian Tour, and, they get an appearance fee. And Tiger, whilst it was, very greatly talked about how high his appearance fee would be, whenever he went to an overseas tournament, I mean, he never just sort of went there and took it as a holiday. I mean, he every tournament he played and he wanted to win, but he took so much pride in how he played in tournaments where he was the guest player, the player getting paid an appearance fee. So his whole mindset was probably a little different to some of the other players, or most of the other players, but. As we're just talking, the passion. You got, if you want to be successful, you've got to have some passion. It's just part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I want the audience to really take out of what you just said, right? Because you could just show up, or you can make every rep like it's your last. Like, this is the winning shot. This is the winning phone call if you're a salesperson, right? Or whatever it is. Like, the most important thing that we can do every day, and this is for every professional listening, even student, you're students and you're in band or wherever it is, listen to this very carefully. No matter what you do every single day, do not leave anything on the table. Do not go home wishing you would have done more. Do not go home wishing you would have acted differently. Never regret your effort, because you can control two things in this life. See, this is what I truly believe: your attitude and your effort.
Yeah, I mean that's a great. It's not a lesson on life, a lesson on sport. That's just a lesson on life. We all know you only get one chance in life, one chance at it, and if you can live every day to the fullest, and do everything that you set out to do every day, and that you'll always be successful. Like there's a lot of I've watched a lot of players over the years that play on this PGA Tour. And, you've got some guys that have got an unbelievable amount of talent that are incredibly good players. Their work ethic is not what the top of the players at the top of the tree are. Then you've got players that don't have a lot of ability, natural ability, and they work at it incredibly hard, and they work to compete against the best players in the world. Now, you take your hat off to those guys, but in sport, there's become so much money in sport, and golf has quickly caught up to the other sports here in the last couple of years, as far as what the prize purses are and things. That the money's getting right up there, and ultimately I know there are a lot of players that are incredibly good players, but because of the money they make, they just don't have that work ethic that they probably should have, because it becomes natural to them, and they make great money. And that's where another thing where Tiger separated himself from that. Here's a guy that's playing golf. He's the greatest player that's ever played the game. He's made more money than any other athlete playing, or any other athlete, not just golf, but any other athlete. And that didn't take anything away from that sole goal of trying to, equal or if not pass Jack's, record. That nothing, money can do that to a lot of people. Like Tiger, he's earned everything that he's achieved, and that's hard work and graft.
Yeah, that to me is just having a standard. It's a standard. Like, you have to have standards, and if your standard is that, then like you said, like, it can't change you. Like, the money is just, a root cause of your greatness and everything you're putting in, right? That's cool to have, but what legacy do you want to live, right? You want to leave a legacy of like, that guy or that girl did everything they could every single day, and there was nothing that they took for granted.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right, and that's where you question yourself. You ask yourself, what is your ultimate goal, and what is your legacy? And of course, you're fully on to everybody's. There's been so much debate here in the last couple of years over the Live Tour, and that is it good, is it not good? Right? And everybody's got their own opinion on that, but ultimately, if you're a professional golfer and you go and play on your Live Tour on the Live Tour, you're probably not worrying too much about your legacy, would be my belief. Because if I said to anybody who's won the most Live Tour events, or who won this Live Tour event, people don't remember that. The PGA Tour, that's the tour that everybody aspires to play on, whether you grow up playing golf and, whatever part of the world you grow up playing golf on, you want to play on the PGA Tour, compete against the best players in the world on the PGA Tour, and that's where you're going to leave an incredible legacy. And you look at the likes of the greatest players that ever played the game. Jack Nicklaus, your Lee Trevinos, your Arnold Palmer, your Gary Players, your Byron Nelsons, your Ben Hogans, and that. Look at their legacy and look what it means. And Tiger, he when he had such a lofty goal that he was trying to achieve, his legacy just gets built along the way as he's trying to do that. Ultimately, it becomes an incredible legacy, but while he's doing it, he probably doesn't realize the legacy he's building, because he's so focused on one thing and one thing only. And
there it is. So that's what that right there, right? That's what I want people to take out of it as well. Like, when you are intent in your purpose and you're in the work, you're doing the work. You're not worried about building a legacy. You're worried about working on your skills, performing on the golf course, and everything else comes as a product of that. And so if it were reverse, right? Because I think at some point in life, most people can work the other way around. I know I have, right? Yeah. Before my show started to really grow, I was focused on a bunch of other things and not worry about all the intricate details of becoming a better listener, being a better communicator, and all those things that would make my show really good. I wanted this. I had it mixed up, man. But the moment I started working on the other things, the foundational things that were going to build me, that's when everything started to take off. So that's when you start getting the results. Is when you focus on, I always call it that journey, right? The journey in between. That's the failure. That's the heartbreak. That's the tears. That's the frustration. That's the anger. And if we harness all of those emotions and continue to stay steadfast in the discipline in our work, that goal ends up being hit because you are focused on the little things.
Yeah, like 100% that. Yeah, if you continue on the track that you set yourself and don't go off the track, and your legacy will just follow behind you. You know, it's not something you have to try and build, something you have to do, something you have to put in place. It's a foundation that you're building because you're ultimately the way that you're competing and your desire and everything to get to where you want to go. It's look, I mean, in sport and particularly professional golf and that, you know, if you look at, there's so many great players in that, but to achieve greatness, you got to work hard. Nothing is given to you, and there are so many great players that play the game of golf, and there's so many great players on the fringes that are looking to get onto the PGA Tour and that. So, you know, it's the ultimate. You know, like a guy like Tiger, you know, he was just the ultimate warrior, the ultimate competitor, and there's so many traits that you got to admire him when you look at when a guy wins a tournament. You know, the next week, often the guy that's won the tournament and he's playing the next week, his performance would be subpar, you know, of what you'd expect. You know, Tiger ultimately so many times win a tournament and then win the next tournament and even win the next tournament. You know, every time that the week was finished, you know, it's a new goal. It's a new week, new goal. You know, that's finished. That's done. I'm going to get better next week. You know, like just the continued drive to get better, and whatever you do ultimately can lead you to being a very, very successful, whether it be a business person, sports person, whatever it could be. And it's just, you know, that continual work ethic. You can't replace hard work and dedication for anything, and you can't go out and buy that. You can only do it. So
true, man. So true. It's like having the equivalent of a short memory. Right? It's like you want to forget the win as quickly as possible, right? Because you want to move forward and continue to get better. And if there's a loss or adversity, you know, especially in sports and even in life, I mean, obviously, like, you don't want to dwell on that past. You want to have a short memory and move on and understand these two moments here are not connected. So we got to stay disciplined in between those moments so then we can go perform. And that's what the greats do. That's what Tiger did his whole life. You know, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, when you all the events that you didn't do well at, like every week, at the end of every week or start of the next week, and that we would go over the week's performance before. You know, okay, what was missing from last week? You know, I was huge on statistics, kept every possible note that you could possibly take. This is even before statistics were available, and I would compile my statistics a little differently to how natural statistic would be taken, but I talk about that in the book as well. But you know, you just take a lot of notes and everything but it's also very important to, you know, like when you don't do well, why didn't I do well? You know, what were the reasons, and then you take that, and so you prevent poor performances. Is there a common theme when I have a poor week? What is it's made a poor week in that? So over a period of time, you can avoid having very, very poor performances because you actually identify what it is that causes those performances and that. So, you know, in golf, the players that play at the highest level, ultimately they're trying to win major championships. And to be able to do that, you've got to peak for those tournaments and that. And that's a very hard thing to do because some guys, you know, might peak the week before, the week after. You know, by peaking, it's playing at your absolute best. And Tiger found a recipe of doing that just based upon tournaments he'd play leading up to it, how much rest he needed up to it, the practice that would go in leading into the major championship. He put that recipe together better than anybody else has done. So each time he played in majors, he was a contender for most of the time, and ultimately won more than anybody else in his era. So, along with all the hard work and dedication and practice there's also got to be a lot of, sitting down and identifying a lot of things, and that, when it's going really well, how is it that I'm going really well? What am I doing? What am I feeling? How's my body working? And when I'm not going well, why aren't I playing well? Is my body not feeling good? What am I doing differently? And then you keep all these kind of things there so that you can get on a, in sport, you can get on a roll and keep going, because you've got to, you've actually got a package that tells you, okay, this is what I do when So when I was working for Tiger, I just kept comprehensive notes, to the point where I was writing down in that, what mood he was in when he got to the golf course, what sort of pace was he walking at. If he's on edge and that, he'd be walking very quickly. If he's very comfortable in his own shoes, he's arriving at the golf course knowing he's probably going to have a good day, feels good about everything, he's walking at a slower pace, all this kind of thing. So, in the end, you have so much information that you can put it all together.
I love that feedback, right? This mathematical equation almost, right? If he shows up like this, he's feeling like this. Then you can rewind. Okay, if you're feeling, now your element, you're walking fast or you're high stress or whatever, what happened? You can boil it down to, are you hydrated? What did you eat last night? How well did you sleep? Was there anything else that happened, right? So that you can get rid of those other components that may contribute to that mental state. I think it's super important, because I think everybody should be looking at that. You don't have to be a professional athlete to look at that. I had a really bad meeting this morning. Okay, well, walk me through your morning, right? Let's identify where the breakdown was. Maybe you and your kids had a rough day getting them ready for school, put you in a bad mindset, and you didn't flush it, right? This feedback we have in our life is there for a reason. So those moments where you and Tiger sit down and talk about the week, the things that went well, the things that went bad, like, in order to be great at anything, you have to be willing to look at the things that didn't go well under a bigger microscope. You have to pay more attention to that, because if we alleviate those things and keep these other things the same, then we progress at a greater rate.
Yeah, 100%. You've got to work out, how you can accelerate at the quickest rate, and you've got a graph and you want to go, there's always going to be, the graph's never going to keep going straight up. It's always going to have dips, highs and lows in it. But as long as you can identify when those lows were, and when, like so forth, and you in sport, like, it's only possible to win so many tournaments. So like a guy like Tiger, a week for him, a successful week is only a win and nothing else. So some guys are happy with a top 5, top 10, top 20, just making the cut. Some guys are happy to make the cut, and, get a check and go down the road to the next tournament. Tiger, the only measure of a success for him was a win. And, you work alongside a guy like that, it's incredible, when I look back now, and particularly when I wrote the book and spent a lot of time sitting down writing the book and thinking about it, and I didn't probably understand how much pressure I was under myself in that, because this is a guy that only wants to win. And, if he finishes second, well, that's not a good week. And only a win is a successful week. And you can only, like some years you might win 3 tournaments. And in his case, there was years where he won over 10 tournaments. So, but for him, it was all about winning and winning major championships. So a couple of those years there where he didn't win a major championship, they were incredibly stressful times. And each time, when it went to one major, on to the next one not winning, there's a lot of pressure there. And, I sort of talk about that in the book as well, so that the reader will get a very, like I said, a very backstage pass to arguably that we would think was probably the best sustained period of golf played by anybody.
1000%. And Zapit, right? I don't think there's any denying that, listening to that. It's funny because, I suddenly feel bad for my wife and my team, right? Because, we have statistics, we have rankings, categories, and podcasting and all that kind of stuff, right? And I could be number 6, number 5, number 3 I'm pissed. I'm not winning, right? And I think it takes a special person to understand that, right? It's like, for me, it's like, that's not number one. Like, we are not done. We are not finished until we get there and we stay there, right? I know I'm momentary dips, but we need to get there. We need to stay there for a long period of time. And that to me is winning. But it also gets the level of everybody else to rise up to understand, okay, everything's great. We love what we're doing, but at the same time, we are not done. We are not done. We have to continue pushing to get to that spot. And again, we're talking about greatness here. It's the same thing in life.
Yeah. One of the things I get asked the most about, and one of the things that are intrigued the most about Tiger is during his time playing at the highest level, he went through numerous coaches, which surprised a lot of people that, you'd play so well with one coach and then you'd move on to another coach and then on to another coach. Why would you do that sort of thing? Well, Tiger just absolutely was always searching for perfection. No matter how good he was, and throughout 95% of the time that I was came from, he's number one player in the world. So he was the dominant player, but you can always get better. No matter how good you play, how good you are, you can always get better. And Tiger was always open to listening to, different theories on the golf swing, different theories on how you can play. And ultimately, he always believed he could get better. And that was incredibly unique to watch, that somebody as great as he was playing, as dominant as he was, and he still believed that he could get better. And in that time that I came from, he worked under 3 different coaches, and ultimately, each time he changed coaches, he might have had a little bit of a downward spiral for a little bit, but ultimately he knew through hard work and everything that he believed in, that this coach brought to the table, that he was going to get better. Incredible mindset to do that. When you're very, very, very few athletes, when they get to the very pinnacle of their sport, would think, what, I can get better. And then to do that, I've got to take a step backwards. I've got to rebuild my swing. And when you introduce some new swing changes in that in golf, they don't happen overnight. It might be, 3 weeks, 3 months, or even longer. It takes a long time to introduce some new swing thoughts in that. And he did that. I mean, incredible. So he was never, ever going to get complacent. And a lot of people, in the end, they get complacent, and there's many reasons why you get complacent in that, but he never, ever got complacent. He never took his foot off the gas. He just kept working, and he, ultimately always believed you could improve. No matter how good you are, you can always get better. And that's like you say, you get to number one, you can't get complacent because somebody else is going to tip you off the scale. And if you're at the top of the tree, you've got to stay at the top of the tree, and you can't be complacent. You've got to get better and better and better. And no matter what you do in life, how you go about it, you can always get better.
It's funny, as we land the plane here. Like this last part of this conversation is so valuable for the audience to pay attention to, because I don't care who you are, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Barry Bonds, Roger Federer, doesn't matter. You can always get better. So if you're sitting there right now thinking you're comfortable, you're doing well at your job, you're doing well with certain things, you're the greatest husband ever, greatest father ever, or wife or mother, everything can be improved. There's always another level of you that you can achieve by becoming greater and greater. The job's never done. We're never done developing, right? We're growing constantly. I just think it's super important for everybody to realize that the people that you are watching on TV, like Tiger Woods, was never satisfied. I'm not saying he wasn't grateful. There's a big misconception there with people that are great. Why can't they just be grateful with where they're at? They are, but they're also not satisfied. There's more for them to do. And it keeps giving them purpose and to reinvent themselves constantly, even with a golf swing or a new strategy. It's super important because we're proving to ourselves constantly that we can start over from scratch and still do it again. And I think that right there is the message to greatness. It's the message to anything that is spectacular in life. You're never done. You must get back.
Yeah, 100%. Like if you just write down, 10 of your core values, what your things that you'd like, you say your happiness, your fitness, your diet, your work, all the different things, your work ethic, the time you put into things. And at the end of the day, can you go through and give yourself a 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10? You'll never be able to do however you want to rate yourself and all the different things that you want to rate yourself on. Is there ever a day you can say, 10, did I eat exactly what I should have eaten today? Was I happy all day today? Did I work as hard as I could today? All the different things. There's never a day that you'll be able to never have a day where you did everything to 100%. So that you can always improve, and that's where in professional sports and that you can, like the guys that get good, they always strive to get better and better and better, and that in itself, the journey of working hard and trying to get better, no matter what you do. If you enjoy that journey, enjoy that process, you may not get there, but certainly if you enjoy it, it's a great journey, and you put yourself in a great position to do better.
Yeah. Well said, man. Well said. See, thank you so much for spending your morning with me. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and you gave a ton of value to the audience. We talk a lot about the book, The Greatness of Tiger Woods, the mindset, the pursuit of greatness, the discipline and determination, all the things that no matter who you are or what you do in this world, on this planet, you can implement into your life and be great as well. So I appreciate you, my friend. It was an amazing conversation, and just thanks, man. That was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, good. Great, Sean. Yeah. Like I said, I hope the reader enjoys the book. Evan and I, who I did the book with, we were extremely pleased how it came out, and we think the reader will get a really true understanding of what made such a great champion in Tiger Woods, and arguably the greatest player that we're ever going to see. Thanks for having us on your show.
He's the greatest. I don't care. 15 to 18, I don't care. Tiger Woods. He's a go. So for you guys listening and watching, I want to thank you so much. Share this with somebody you know, love, and trust, and tell us everything you love about the episode. Keep coming back every Monday, every Friday, and until next time, stay determined.
Sharp French, what up? This one luck, I let the pain inspire me. I put my all in everything I'm doing. Up until it's done, I'm me for the entirety. I put it in overtime, I be working. Just know I'ma go for mine, cause I earned it. They watching, I know it's time, I confirmed it. A whole society determined to show.